Show you what the cover of Chapter 2, The Magic in Baseball, looks like. This is a cover that our publisher allowed my husband Bruce, who just spoke with you, to design and take the picture of. This boy happens to be a student at IS-7 in Staten Island. The reason I'm taking you to this boy is it's a really fun and special story to share. I had been writing this book for 2.5 years before it became a book. And in my mind's eye, I had a vision of what the boy would look like. And for some reason, what I visualized was a boy who looked very much like this boy. Now, the main character in the book is Jake. So let's bring you up to 2.5 years after I developed the character Jake, and I'm shopping in Pathmark, right by the Entenmann's Cakes, and I see this boy. And I stop in my tracks and I do something that may have seemed a little rude, and I stare. And then I see his mom and I go over and I say, "Hello, my name is Susan Wigden. I live in Staten Island. I'm a children's author, and your son here looks very much like a boy that I imagined for 2.5 years. So the mom calls her son over and says, "Jake, come here." So, the main character, who is Jake Milo, who at the time was 10, is also the Jake in my story. So, when I first visited school, of course, I went to IS-7 because of Jake. And what I realized, too, about what he looked like visually, is that in my mind, my character, Jake, was really cool. And if you have any idea of what cool really is being really nice. Cool is being respectful to yourself and to others and to your friends. Cool is never disrespecting yourself or your friends. And this boy, Jake, really was like the character in my book. So I decided how great I want him on this cover. The first thing that an author or writer does is called write. And we write often and almost wherever we are. We have a pad with us and we're forever taking notes. And when we write, no matter how long or short, whether it's a 32-page picture book or a long novel, there's something that we always need to do when we're finally finished. And does anyone know what that is, this girl right here? Well, that's a good point you're saying, because we hope to publish, but there's a long process after we write. Let's take it here.
Revise.
Revise. Revise. That was the next word under my right is revise. Revise means go back and reread and find your errors. Now I have a question. How many of you, when you're given an assignment of an essay or composition, how many of you write it and turn it into your teachers? Okay. We have some honest people back there, and a few who may be a little embarrassed, to be honest, is Mr. Flynn. And at one point, I actually spelled his name, Mr. Finn. Is he a fish? I don't think so. So I needed to revise, and that's the work of a writer. So whenever you have something to write, revise it. The next step in being an author is called research. Well, what should you research if you already wrote? What should you research? Anybody have an idea? After you write And after you revise, what should you research? Anybody here, this girl? What you're looking for? Okay. Your words, anybody else? Okay. Well, the next thing that we do is we research what publishers would want our work. How do we know that? What if we submit to a publisher that only wants how to make cabinets? Is he going to like my mid-grade novel? So we can go to the library. Anybody know what a library is these days? Oh, you do? You do know what a library is? That's wonderful, because when I was your age, we didn't have a computer. We didn't go to a desk and click on a computer and research. We actually went with our parents, and we walked or we took a car and we went to the library to do research. At the library, there are many books that help you become a published author. One of them is called The Writer's Market. Anybody ever seen this book? What's in here is hundreds of names of publishers. And they tell you what kind of work they want. They will tell you if they like mid-grade stories, and then they actually have it in categories. No vampires, no humor, only tender stories, only scary stories. So if I submitted my novel, Chapter 2, The Magic in Baseball, to a publisher who only published vampires, do you think he would want my story? Do you know where he would put it? Trash. That's right. He would throw it out. So it's really important to know the proper publisher. Does anybody know what formatting a manuscript means? Anybody ever format something? Publisher. So part of being a writer is being determined. Can anybody tell me what the word determined means? This boy in the green? Did you hear what he said? You're truthful and you're going to keep doing it and not giving up. That's called determined. And because I was determined, I actually ended up with this published book, which I'm very, very proud of. Now, a lot of times children say to me, well, why can't I get published? The truth is you can. You just don't know where. But I'd like to begin with something I realized just last week. Does anybody get the Staten Island Advance, that newspaper? Your parents might get that? Great. Sometimes once a week, sometimes every day. Did you ever turn to the end where it says Children's Corner? Have you seen that? Children submit. They send their work to the Advance, whether it's illustrations. Anybody can tell me what an illustration is? A drawing, or a poem, or a story. So that's one place to begin. And that's how I began many years ago. My first published work was in a little news bulletin in the apartment house where I lived. So you need to start small. Okay? And on this sheet, flyer, that was given out to you, there is a list of places for children to submit their work or their illustration. One particular place called Guardian Angel, I think they require the school to get involved. But what I am re-announcing, as Bruce said, is that when you finished, if you would like to participate in the contest we're having, we have 3 winners, not all from the school, but from all our submissions. Just to show you that if you don't end up being published on our website, you should continue working at it. But we are going to publish 3 children whose stories we think would be a sequel. Anybody know what a sequel is? Sequel to a story? Wow, a continuation. That's right. Good job. Okay. Now I'd like to ask you if you have any questions, because usually when I go to the younger children, because I love to write rhyming stories. That's my main love, rhyming stories. And as Bruce mentioned, I have 2 rhyming books out with 2 more to come. One that shall be at the end of October, and the other one is called Silly Rhymes for Fun Times. And Sienna, you know I can be silly. Even adults can be silly. Anyway, I'm going to turn the questions over to the audience so that you can ask me questions. Usually the younger children, who are about 6, they say, "What's your favorite color?" And then I tell them. And then they ask me questions. "Do you have a pet?" And I tell them. And then they ask me how old I am, and I tell them. But I know that you people have questions about being published. So I'd like to begin. Let's start on this side with this girl. If you could come over to me so I can hear you and maybe you could speak. Have asked me. Even the publisher that finally took me is a man called Ray Rupert of Textware Publishing, and he is out in Washington. And I told him that no, there is not a chapter 1. Chapter 2 relates to the chapter of a magic book called Magic and More that Mr. Flynn gives to Jake to learn magic. But there's another lesson in the magic book because it's magic and more. And I also want to just, before we go on to questions, mention that if you do want to read this book, but your parents are saying, well, right now, I can't give you the money, that happens. We understand that. So if you should decide you really want to do it, there's a way for you to chip in. Get together with some friends. You can even get together with about 10 or 11 friends, so it could cost you $1. And then you could sign your name in the book, and then you could give the book to a charity. That would be really nice. Do you know, there are many children in Staten Island who don't have places to live, that live in shelters. There are children that are sick in hospitals that may appreciate a gift. And charity is always a good thing, so you could do it that way. So there's always a way, okay? Now we're going to continue with questions.
How many books did you publish total?
Okay, totally, this is our first mid-grade novel, and I have 2 other picture book stories with 2 to come. So that, by the end of this June, that will be 5. And in June, I'll most likely be at Barnes & Noble. And you will find that my book, Suppose, and now my book out, Suppose at the Supermarket. Should I tell you one of the rhyming lines? Suppose the olives jumped out of the can and they formed their own rock band. And my illustrator has the olives with a wig and a guitar and drums. So I like to rhyme. Oh my, am I gonna write any football stories? Well, there's only one thing that I know less about in baseball, and that would be football. So really, I don't think I could perfect it. It would be a challenge. Anybody know what a challenge is? What's a challenge? Anybody want to tell us what a challenge is? Do you want to tell us? Something that you don't know how to do, that challenges you, yes. Okay, some more questions, let's see. If you haven't asked a question, okay, this boy right here.
Would you say this book is your best so far?
Would I say that it's my best? The word best
always means what you like the most. Okay, so maybe it is my best, but we always try to give everything we do our best. Okay, do we have time for a few more questions? Is that?